there's a moment when reality stops making sense. Not in a poetic way, but in a visceral, terrifying way where the ground beneath your feet literally stops being solid. Your job suddenly feels suffocating even though nothing changed. Your relationships feel hollow even though no one said anything wrong. Your daily routines feel like you're moving through molasses, and when you look in the mirror, the person staring back feels like a stranger wearing your face. This isn't depression, though it might feel similar. This isn't burnout, though your body is exhausted. What's happening to you is that you're crossing timelines, and your nervous system is registering the friction between the reality you've been living and the reality you're moving toward. The world isn't falling apart. You are phasing out of one-dimensional frequency and into another, and the transition zone is where most people lose themselves because no one told them this was possible. If you're experiencing this right now, if these words are landing in your chest with a strange recognition, then you need to understand something crucial. The disorientation you're feeling isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something is finally becoming right. And if you stay with me through this journey, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening at the quantum level when timelines shift, why your brain interprets this as catastrophe when it's actually evolution, and most importantly, how to navigate this crossing without collapsing back into the old frequency that no longer fits who you're becoming. Those of us who walk this path know that timeline shifts aren't mystical abstractions. They're measurable changes in how your consciousness interfaces with probability fields, and they come with specific physiological, psychological, and energetic signatures that science is only beginning to map. This channel exists for people who are ready to understand transformation at the deepest levels, not through comforting platitudes, but through the actual mechanics of how reality restructures itself when you fundamentally change. If that resonates with where you are right now, I invite you to subscribe, because what we explore here goes far beyond surface-level motivation. We dive into the architecture of consciousness itself. Here's what nobody tells you about personal transformation. It doesn't happen within your current timeline. It happens by shifting between timelines. Most people think change means improving yourself within your existing reality, like upgrading the software on the same device. But that's not how quantum consciousness works. When you undergo genuine transformation, when you fundamentally alter your identity at the level of belief, perception, and nervous system regulation, you don't just change within your timeline, you actually shift into a parallel probability stream, where a different version of events becomes your lived experience. This sounds abstract until you understand that quantum physics has already proven that observation collapses probability waves into specific outcomes. Your consciousness isn't passively receiving reality. It's actively selecting which probability stream becomes materialized as your experience. The version of you that existed last month was tuned to a specific frequency, attracting specific people, opportunities, and circumstances that match that vibration. But when something inside you fundamentally shifts, when you have that moment of clarity where you can't unsee what you've seen or unknow what you've learned, you've just changed channels. And here's the part that makes people feel like they're going insane. The new channel hasn't fully loaded yet, but the old channel is already breaking up. That in-between space, that static-filled transition zone, is what you're experiencing when your world feels like it's falling apart. You're literally between timelines, and both your brain and your external reality are scrambling to catch up with the frequency shift that already happened in your consciousness. This is why everything feels wrong, why nothing fits, why you can't go back to who you were, but you also can't clearly see who you're becoming. The question isn't whether you're crossing timelines. If you're feeling this dissonance, you already are. The question is whether you're going to resist the crossing and make it infinitely harder, or whether you're going to understand the mechanics and flow with the physics of dimensional transition. Let me explain exactly what's happening when you cross timelines, starting with the neuroscience and then moving into the quantum mechanics. Your brain operates through something called predictive processing. It's constantly running simulations of what it expects to happen next, based on past patterns. Every experience you've had has created neural pathways, and these pathways form a predictive model of reality. When you wake up tomorrow and go through your routine, Your brain isn't actually processing everything fresh. It's running a prediction based on your historical data, and then it checks whether reality matches the prediction. When reality matches, you feel normal. When reality doesn't match, you feel cognitive dissonance, anxiety, and confusion. Now here's what happens during a timeline shift. When your core identity changes through insight, trauma, awakening, or intentional reprogramming, the predictive model your brain has been using suddenly becomes obsolete. The person you're becoming has different predictions about what's possible, different responses to situations, different emotional baselines. But your neural architecture was built for the old you, so now you have a mismatch. Your new consciousness is broadcasting at one frequency, while your biological hardware is still calibrated to the old frequency. This creates what neuroscientists call prediction error, but what you experience as everything feeling off, everything feeling wrong, everything feeling unstable. Your brain is essentially screaming that reality isn't matching its model, which triggers your threat detection systems, because from an evolutionary perspective, when reality stops matching predictions, that usually means danger, but you're not in danger, you're in transition. At the quantum level, something even more profound is occurring. Quantum field theory shows us that all possible versions of events exist simultaneously as probability waves until observation collapses them into a single experienced reality. Your consciousness acts as the observer. The frequency you're vibrating at determines which probability wave you collapse into experience. When you were operating at your old frequency, you were unconsciously collapsing probability waves that matched that vibration. Certain people showed up. Certain opportunities appeared. Certain limitations felt absolute. But when your frequency shifts, you're now collapsing different probability waves. The timeline where those old patterns continue is no longer being selected by your observation. You've moved into a parallel track where different potentials are becoming actualized. The disorientation comes from the lag time. Your external circumstances were generated by your old frequency and take time to rearrange. Your relationships were based on the old you and need to either evolve or complete. Your environment was chosen by previous preferences and hasn't caught up yet. You're standing in a reality built by your past while broadcasting a frequency from your future. And that contradiction is what makes everything feel like it's disintegrating. Those of us who understand this process recognize these symptoms immediately because we've been through multiple timeline shifts ourselves, and we know that this uncomfortable transition phase is actually proof that the shift is working. Now let me show you the 3 mistakes people make when they're crossing timelines that actually trap them in the transition zone and prevent the new reality from fully materializing. The first mistake is trying to fix the external chaos while ignoring the internal frequency shift. When your world starts falling apart, the instinct is to grab onto what's dissolving and try to hold it together. Your relationship is feeling distant, so you try harder to make it work using the old strategies. Your job feels meaningless, so you push yourself to care about things that no longer resonate. Your social circle feels superficial, so you force yourself to show up and pretend nothing has changed. This is the equivalent of trying to watch your old TV channel while your antenna is already tuned to a new frequency. All you get is static. The chaos isn't a problem to solve. It's a symptom of frequency mismatch. When you try to force alignment between your new frequency and your old circumstances, you create enormous internal tension. You're essentially telling the universe that you want to move forward while simultaneously clutching the past, and that mixed signal keeps you suspended in the uncomfortable middle. Second mistake is interpreting the emptiness as depression when it's actually recalibration. There's a phase in every timeline shift where you feel hollow, where nothing excites you, where you can't access motivation, even for things you used to love. People panic at this point and think something is medically or psychologically wrong. They go searching for fixes, for diagnoses, for explanations that will make the emptiness go away. But this emptiness isn't pathological, it's necessary. Your dopamine system, which drives motivation through seeking and reward, was wired to your old goals, your old pleasures, your old definitions of success. When those no longer align with your new frequency, The dopamine pathway temporarily goes quiet. This isn't dysfunction. It's your nervous system refusing to invest energy in pursuits that don't match who you're becoming. The emptiness is making space. It's clearing out the old reward systems so new ones can form around what actually matters to your emerging self. Fighting this emptiness, trying to artificially recreate motivation through willpower or stimulation, just delays the recalibration. You need to let the old system go offline so the new system can come online. The third mistake is seeking validation from people who are still in your old timeline. This is the most subtle but most devastating error. When you're going through a timeline shift, you're changing at a fundamental level, but the people around you are still perceiving the old you. Their nervous systems are still expecting you to behave, respond, and relate in familiar ways. When you start showing up differently, it creates dissonance in them too. They might criticize your changes, question your decisions, or subtly pressure you to go back to who you were because that version felt safer to them. And here's the trap. When you're in the vulnerable transition zone, when you're not yet solid in your new frequency, their doubt becomes contagious. You start second-guessing yourself. You start thinking maybe they're right, maybe you are just going through a phase, maybe you should just go back to normal. But you can't go back. The frequency shift already happened. Trying to conform to other people's expectations of your old self while you're in a new frequency creates a fracture in your energy field that manifests as anxiety, exhaustion, and chronic self-doubt. Many of us in this community have made these exact mistakes, which is why we can spot them so clearly now. We've learned through painful experience that timeline shifts require you to trust your internal compass, even when external validation disappears. I need you to hear something that might completely shift how you're experiencing this moment. The falling apart isn't failure, it's physics. When a caterpillar enters the chrysalis, it doesn't just grow wings and walk out. Its entire body liquefies. Every cell breaks down into primordial soup before reorganizing into a butterfly. If you open that chrysalis during the transition, you wouldn't find a caterpillar with wings. You'd find biological chaos. And if that caterpillar had consciousness during that phase, it would feel exactly like you feel now. Like everything that made sense is gone. Like structure has dissolved into void. Like death rather than transformation. But here's the truth that the caterpillar can't see. The dissolution is the transformation. The breaking down is how the building up happens. There is no other path. You're not doing this wrong. You're not failing at transformation because it feels terrible. You're in the metabolic middle of metamorphosis, and it's supposed to feel disorienting because your entire operating system is being rewritten at the source code level. The reason you feel like your world is falling apart is because it is, and it needs to. The structures of your old timeline, the patterns that kept that version of reality stable, they were built on a foundation that no longer exists. Your new frequency can't sustain those old forms. They have to dissolve so something new can emerge that actually matches the vibrational truth of who you're becoming. This isn't loss, even though it feels like loss. It's liberation, even though liberation looks like chaos in the middle of the process. The relationships that fade were based on the old you. The opportunities that disappear were matched to the old frequency. The versions of yourself that no longer feel accessible were serving a timeline you've already departed. Let them go. Not with bitterness or force, but with recognition that they were perfect for where you were, and they're not aligned with where you're going. And here's what I want you to do right now. As a way of anchoring this understanding, if this message is reaching that part of you that knows this is true, that recognizes your experience in these words, give this video a like. Not as a casual gesture, but as an intentional act of saying yes to the timeline you're entering. As a way of telling the universe that you're ready to stop resisting the dissolution and start trusting the restructuring. Because every time you consciously align with your emerging frequency, even in small ways, you accelerate the timeline convergence and reduce the duration of the uncomfortable transition. Before we move into what to do with this understanding, I want to give you 2 questions that will reveal exactly where you are in this crossing and what's trying to emerge through the chaos. First question: what part of your old life are you still trying to force into your new frequency? And what would happen if you stopped? Sit with that. Don't rush to an answer. The thing you're gripping most tightly, the thing you're most afraid to release, that's usually the anchor, keeping you in the transition zone instead of fully entering the new timeline. It might be a relationship you're trying to save by becoming smaller. It might be a career path you're trying to stay committed to, even though every cell in your body is screaming that it's wrong. It might be an identity, a role you've played for so long that releasing it feels like erasing your entire history. But ask yourself honestly, is this thing actually serving the person you're becoming? Or is it a cord still plugged into who you used to be? Second question: if the chaos you're experiencing wasn't a problem but a signal, what is it pointing you toward? Because here's what most people miss about timeline shifts. The dissolution isn't random. The things falling apart are showing you precisely what doesn't vibrate at your new frequency. Your boredom is showing you what no longer feeds your soul. Your restlessness is showing you where you've outgrown your container. Your relationships becoming strained is showing you where authentic connection has been replaced by comfortable patterns. The chaos has intelligence. It's not destroying your life, it's deconstructing the scaffolding that was built around a version of you that no longer exists. So what is the pattern? What's consistently showing up as no longer aligned? That's your roadmap. That's the universe showing you exactly what needs to transform for your new timeline to fully materialize. Those of us who've crossed multiple timelines know that these questions aren't comfortable, but they're essential. They're the difference between being a passive victim of change and being an active participant in your own evolution. Now let me give you the specific practices that will help you navigate this crossing with more grace and less resistance. These aren't complicated techniques. They're simple shifts that send a clear signal to your nervous system and the quantum field that you're committed to the new frequency. First practice: every morning, before you engage with any external input, sit in silence for 5 minutes and ask yourself this question: who am I becoming today? Not who you were yesterday, not who you think you should be, but who you're choosing to become in this present moment. This practice reprograms your brain's predictive processing to start building new models based on your emerging identity rather than your historical patterns. It tells your nervous system that the past is no longer the template for the future. Second practice: when you feel the urge to go back to old behaviors, old relationships, or old patterns because they feel safe, pause and place your hand on your heart. Take 3 deep breaths and say out loud, "I am in transition, and that is safe." Repeat until your body begins to relax. This creates a new neural association between change and safety instead of change and threat. Your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, has been treating timeline shifts as danger. This practice actively reconditions that response. Third practice: keep a daily log of what you're releasing, not what you're achieving. Write down one thing each day that you consciously chose to let go of. It could be a judgment about yourself. It could be an expectation someone else had of you. It could be a habit that no longer serves you. It could be a story you've been telling about your limitations. This shifts your identity from someone who accumulates to someone who refines, from someone who adds more to someone who becomes more essential. And that shift in identity is what allows the new timeline to stabilize. Fourth practice: create a physical anchor for your new frequency. This could be a specific piece of clothing you only wear when you're embodying your new self. It could be a particular place in your home where you only sit when you're operating from your highest frequency. It could be a gesture, like touching your thumb and forefinger together, that you only do when you're making decisions from your emerging identity rather than your historical conditioning. This gives your brain a clear signal that helps it distinguish between old frequency behaviors and new frequency behaviors, which speeds up the neural rewiring process. These practices work because they address both the neurological and the quantum aspects of timeline crossing. Neurologically, they interrupt old patterns and create space for new ones. Quantum mechanically, they send a coherent signal to the field about which probability stream you're choosing to collapse into experience. Consistency matters more than intensity here. Doing these practices daily with moderate commitment will create far more transformation than doing them occasionally with extreme effort. Many people applying these practices are starting to notice something remarkable. They're beginning to feel less like they're falling apart and more like they're falling into place. The chaos starts feeling less threatening and more clarifying. The emptiness starts feeling less like void and more like spaciousness. And that shift in how you relate to the transition is what allows the transition to complete. I created the trail as a living extension of everything I share in this channel. It's not a course or a theory, it's a practical day-by-day journey to reprogram your identity and hold your new frequency in real life. I designed it to walk with you through that moment when you've already understood the truth, but now need to integrate it, live it, embody it. If this message resonates with you, you'll find the link in the description. It's the natural next step on your path of expansion. Here's something crucial you need to understand about timeline shifts. They're not linear, and you're going to have days where it feels like you snapped back into the old frequency completely. You're going to wake up some mornings and feel like all the progress dissolved overnight. You're going to have moments where you react exactly like the old version of you would have reacted, where you fall into patterns you thought you'd already transcended, where you question whether any of this transformation was real or just a temporary illusion. And when that happens, your mind is going to tell you that you failed, that you're not strong enough, that you're not spiritual enough, that you're fooling yourself thinking you could ever really change. But that interpretation is what keeps you stuck. Those moments aren't regressions, they're integration points. Think of it like learning a new language. You don't become fluent and then never stumble over words again. There are days when your native language dominates, when you can't access the new language no matter how hard you try, when it feels like you've forgotten everything you learned. But you haven't forgotten. Your brain is consolidating. It's integrating the new neural pathways with the old ones, creating a more sophisticated network that can hold both while gradually shifting dominance to the new pattern. The same thing happens with frequency shifts. Your old timeline patterns are deeply embedded in your nervous system, your muscle memory, your automatic responses. They're not going to disappear the moment you have an awakening. They're going to surface again and again, each time giving you an opportunity to consciously choose differently. And each time you notice the old pattern and choose the new response, even if it takes you hours or days to course correct, you're strengthening the new timeline and weakening the old one. The measure of transformation isn't whether you ever slip back. It's how quickly you recognize the slip and how compassionately you return to center. Those of us walking this path together know that everyone experiences these recursive loops. Everyone has days where the old self feels more real than the new self. Everyone questions whether they're making progress or just moving in circles. The difference between people who successfully cross timelines and people who stay trapped in the transition zone isn't that some people are stronger or more committed. It's that the ones who cross understand that these challenges are part of the process, not evidence that the process isn't working. They've learned to meet themselves with curiosity instead of judgment when old patterns resurface. They've learned to see each challenge as an opportunity to deepen their commitment rather than proof that commitment is futile. And they've learned that the community walking alongside them isn't composed of people who never struggle, but people who struggle and keep choosing anyway. So now I want to invite you to do something that marks this moment as significant. I want you to leave a comment below, but not just any comment. I want you to share something that feels true for you right now after hearing this message. It could be an insight that landed. It could be a challenge you're facing that you now understand differently. It could be a commitment you're making to yourself about how you're going to move through this transition. It could be a pattern you're finally ready to release. Whatever it is, let it be genuine. Let it come from that deeper place in you that knows this information isn't just interesting content, but a mirror reflecting your actual experience. Because when you articulate your truth publicly, even in a small way like a comment, you're doing something powerful at the quantum level. You're collapsing the probability wave. You're taking what was internal and uncertain and making it external and declared. You're telling the field which timeline you're choosing. And that declaration, that act of making the internal external, creates momentum. It creates energetic coherence. It sends a signal that you're not just consuming information, you're actively participating in your transformation. The loop we opened at the beginning, the question of why your world is falling apart, now has its answer. Your world is falling apart because you're no longer vibrating at the frequency that created it. The structures that formed around your old identity can't sustain your new frequency. They have to dissolve. But here's what that really means. It means you're not losing your world. You're shedding a reality that was too small for who you're becoming. The falling apart is the expansion. The chaos is the reorganization. The emptiness is the space being created for something more aligned, more authentic, more true. You're crossing timelines. And on the other side of this transition, there's a version of reality where you look back at this moment and realize it wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. The identity you need to hold now isn't the person who has it all figured out. It's the person who's willing to not know while remaining committed to the crossing. It's the person who can stand in the dissolution without demanding premature resolution. It's the person who trusts that the intelligence orchestrating this transformation is far more sophisticated than your conscious mind's need for control and certainty. When you cross timelines, you're not just changing your circumstances. You're changing your fundamental relationship with reality itself. You're moving from being someone who reacts to what shows up to being someone who selects which probability stream becomes your experience. You're moving from being shaped by your environment to being the field that shapes the environment. You're moving from believing that reality is fixed and you have to adapt, to understanding that reality is fluid and you are the one doing the adapting through the frequency you hold. This is the deepest work there is. This is what separates people who experience temporary motivation from people who undergo permanent transformation. And if you've made it to this point in the video, if these words have been resonating in a way that feels both uncomfortable and undeniable, then you're ready for what comes next. Because this channel isn't about one-time insights. It's about sustained transformation. Every video we create goes deeper into the mechanics of consciousness, reality, and the quantum field. Every piece of content is another layer of the map that guides you through not just this timeline crossing, but every evolution your soul calls you toward. So if you feel like this space, this community, this approach to transformation is aligned with your journey, I invite you to subscribe. Not as a passive act of clicking a button, but as an active choice to say, I'm committed to understanding this at the deepest levels. I'm ready to stop looking for quick fixes and start engaging with the actual architecture of how transformation works. I'm willing to be part of a community that speaks this language and walks this path together. Because crossing timelines is something you can do alone, but it's far more sustainable when you're surrounded by others who understand what you're experiencing, who won't pathologize your process, who won't try to pull you back to comfort when you need to stay in the productive discomfort of growth. Your world is falling apart because you're crossing timelines, and that crossing, as destabilizing as it feels right now, is the most important thing you'll ever do. Because on the other side isn't just a better version of your current life, it's an entirely different frequency of existence where you're finally operating as the quantum being you've always been, consciously collapsing probability into the reality that matches your deepest truth. You're not falling apart, you're falling together in a completely new configuration. And everything that's dissolving right now is making space for that.